Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up on the chart here, the only illumination we've got is a dense fog advisory for the greater Anchorage area on up the Glen Highway into the Matanuska Valley for tonight and too early tomorrow morning. I think it's out until 6 a.m. Sunday morning. That's for dense fog, reducing visibilities to a quarter mile or less from Birchwood on up into the Matanuska Valley. And the idea right now is the dense fog anyway, will stay to the east of Wasilla and out of the Susitna Valley, at least at this point in time. That's the way it looks. And for the satellite imagery yesterday, not a lot going on in the Gulf of Alaska. Pretty benign weather here across the southeast coast. Patch of snow moving up into the northeast interior area there, but just variably cloudy over much of the state with some areas of flurries, gusty east winds up along the eastern Arctic coast, and then a system approaching the western Aleutians there, mostly sliding to the south of the chain, and then clouds gathering here to the south with the next system that actually came right on up last night and this morning into the southern panhandle. We'll see today looking not too bad here to start with, but you can see as the lapse goes on, it really dissipates and falls apart as it moves northward, and not a lot of precipitation associated with that. And then another system developing here moving up toward the Queen Charlotte's, rain already moving in toward the Dixon entrance area. Otherwise, just some clouds here over the Copper River Basin. Clouds and a few showers, Kodiak Island up into Kachemak Bay, and then down along the Alaska Peninsula, and then some flurries up here in the northwest, and kind of cold up on the north slope in the Arctic coast, really from the Brooks Range all the way out to the Arctic there. Temperatures 15 to 30 below this afternoon. Still pretty gusty winds from Point Lay on down to Cape Lisburne, Point Hope area there. The 25 gusts 45 miles per hour throughout the day today and into the afternoon. Some moisture here sliding northwestward, bringing a little bit of light snow into the Pribilof Islands this afternoon. And then this system really just kind of rotating some clouds. Not a lot of moisture with that, just 0.03 of an inch in the last 24 hours at both Unalaska and Cold Bay, and probably a little more back out here to the west, and the colder air plunging southward, bringing some snow to Shimei and Attu. And on the chart, here's that rapidly weakening front coming north and northwest along the coast there. Next system right on its heels, be spreading rain up into the area this evening. And then the scattered showers, Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, a few flurries up here over the northwest. Otherwise, not a lot going on around the state with the storm track well to the south of the area there, and then kind of cutting up and bringing some systems into the panhandle. Not much going on weather-wise here, just kind of a typical December afternoon across much of the state. Northeast, or a little bit of light snow possible there this afternoon for St. Lawrence Island, and then the mixture of rain or snow here from the eastern Aleutians on out to the west there again, but amounts very light, the heavier precipitation staying off to the south. And then looking at the forecast for tonight, we'll see a low center comes northward there, southwest of the Queen Charlotte, so rain and wind on the increase again over the southern southeast coast, kind of a mixture swinging both ways there as you get up to the north, but staying dry over the northern panhandle. Northerly winds beginning to increase, north and northeast winds increasing through the northern inside water areas, particularly Lynn Canal. A trough coming northwest here. That'll keep a chance of some moisture in over Kodiak Island, as well as the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. Chance of rain or snow, and a trough will keep it kind of damp there over the Pribilof Islands. But again, very light amounts in whatever falls. The main snow back out here to the west, and that's sliding off to the south and southwest there, while the interior stays mostly dry with variable clouds, but there will be some areas of clearing up here, and chance of some isolated fog or patchy fog up along the Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow, we'll see this low center here comes northward, gale force winds there along the coast and over the possibly over the inside waters. Front moving northward, rain spreading northward, possibly heavy at times, but not all that bad. Pushing up to the north, chances of moisture getting up into the Juneau area and possibly even up to Skagway and around the White Pass area, but dry back to the west. Dry day for Yakutat, North Gulf Coast, some rain and snow showers again possible for Kodiak Island. That could slip on up to the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula and then back in toward Kamishak Bay again and down the peninsula. Southeasterly flow here, possible IFR on the Pacific side of the peninsula there with that flow. And then the main area IFR out over the Bering Sea. Not too bad, easterly flow, offshore flow here, dry conditions. So looking pretty good out along the coast all the way up to the western Arctic coast. Just possibly some patchy low clouds and fog. Otherwise, not much different from today. Winds diminishing though for the western Arctic coastal areas there, and kind of beginning to pick up here over the northern Bering Sea, and some pretty good northerlies there out over the western Aleutians. Looking ahead to Monday, that front still elongated here, a weak front across the Alaska Peninsula. That's going to keep a chance of rain with that southeast flow there on the north side of the frontal boundary. That'll keep conditions a little lower and kind of damp here for Kodiak Island, mostly in the form of rain, and as well as the Alaska Peninsula. Could be more of a snow situation out toward the Pribilof Island areas. Scattered rain and snow showers across Unalaska and Nikolsky, all the way out to Adak and Atka. And could be a partly and mostly clear day here across much of interior Alaska, including the Arctic coast and North Slope areas, all the way down to about Prince William Sound. You'll be picking up some clouds here along the Kenai Peninsula area. Again, kind of a southeast flow going on here. And then that trough actually system weakens and a trough lifts northward, keeping rain and snow showers here across the panhandle, depending on your latitude. Of course, the southern areas probably be in the form of rain. Juneau, Haines on up to Skagway and White Pass, whatever falls will probably be in the form of snow up in that area. But back out to the west, good push of cold air coming down across the western Bering Sea, plunging right across the western Aleutians. So we got good gale force winds, gusts of 50, possibly 60 miles an hour here west of Adak, all the way out to Shemya and Attu. Otherwise, temperatures this afternoon, mid-afternoon readings shaped up like this across the Panhandle, up to 48 at Annette, 46 at Klawock. Metlakatla was the warmest location today with 50 degrees. Otherwise, 32 at Juneau. Same thing at Yakutat, 26 Cordova. Valdez pushed up to 21. 19 at Palmer, 23 Kenai, 25 down at Homer, and 30s to near 40 for Kodiak Island. Below zero north of the Alaska Range, 12 below at Fairbanks, minus 14 at Northway. Otherwise, Fort Yukon at 17 below, Bettles minus 3, and Tanana 1 below, 26 below over at Arctic Village, and 15 to 25 below along the Arctic coast. Barter Island this afternoon, 27 below. They had the state's low this morning of minus 32. And either side of zero here over the northwest interior and the Seward Peninsula areas on down to the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta. McGrath had minus 2. Same thing there at Bethel. Otherwise a little milder, but actually Kipnuk at 1 below zero. Milder definitely here for the Pribilof, mid-30s there. Mid-30s for the central Aleutians, and 30s here to lower 40s along the Alaska Peninsula. Lows for tonight, 20s and 30s there for the southeast coast. 20 to 40 below the Brooks Range, North Slope, and the Arctic coastal areas. See the 0-degree isotherm all the way down the Copper River Basin, kind of right in the Alaska Range and then cutting out across the Yukon Delta. Highs for tomorrow staying quite cold up in the north. Milder 20s down south of the Alaska Range, 30s to mid to upper 40s there for the southeast coast, and in the 30s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Flying weather, IFR here over the southern southeast coast, marginal VFR shifting northward throughout the day slowly, but probably not quite making it up to the northern panhandle, then a branch of that extending across the Gulf to Kodiak Island. Again, possible IFR along the Alaska Peninsula, more widespread area out over the central Bering Sea, and possible marginal VFR at times over the eastern Arctic coast. Passes shaping up like this, all good. In fact, all VFR for the Brooks Range, VFR also for Lake Clark and Merrill, rainy VFR, windy VFR, Isabel and Mentasta, VFR, Tanita, VFR, Portage open, Chilkoot and White, VFR, but there probably will be some clouds, so it won't be a sky blue day there. And for the freezing levels here, again, not much change at the surface, possibly lifting north of the Pribilofs, cutting through Bristol Bay there, and then up along the coast and down the Panhandle, 2,000 feet from Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, in over the southeast coast. Looking at icing threats, again, that next batch of moisture will bring some moderate rime icing at times below about 14,000 feet into the Panhandle, and then some icing threats here from the Barren Islands, Alaska Peninsula, and out into the southeast Bering Sea. Strong jet here across the Pacific, but way to the south of the area there, but one branch bringing its upper low up and that next storm up to the southern Panhandle tomorrow, upper level low out over the Bering Sea. Kind of got a westerly flow at 33,000 feet at about 40 to 50 knots through the interior. 9,000 feet opposite direction, easterlies, 10 to 20, as high as 25 knots here over the Yukon Delta. Pretty strong winds across Prince of Wales Island up to 40 knots, but lighter up to the north. Easterlies at 25 to 30 for the Arctic coast. Southeast, 30 to as high as 40 knots, back around to the north of the western Aleutians. 3,000-foot winds, northerlies, 30 to 40 knots across the western Aleutians. Easterlies here for much of the interior, 10 to 20 knots, stronger on the Arctic coast and along the southwest coast as well. And then the strong winds here from the Queen Charlotte's right up across Prince of Wales Island, and lighter winds on up to the north. Turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop, below about roughly 6,000 feet here from the Queen Charlotte's up into the central Panhandle, with light to isolated moderate chop all the way up into Canada. Pretty smooth through much of interior Alaska. Could be some moderate chop here for the Bristol Bay area and the Alaska Peninsula, as well as across Togiak Bay, Cape Newenham, and those areas. A little bumpy there possibly, but nothing that would hurt you for St. Lawrence Island. And then the stronger winds out here back to the west. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Aerostar 31 Hotel, deviation approved.
Get ready to kick in those swamp routes. The convective activity to the northwest looks like it's about to disrupt the flow into Dulles and Nashville.
Center, United 483. We're getting a rough ride here. Any chance of higher?
United 483, account crossing traffic. Expect higher in 20 miles.
Convective activity is popping up. Or maybe there's ice in the clouds. Or low ceilings. Can you get through it safely? Or should you be on the ground waiting out the weather? As an instrument-rated pilot, these are questions you've got to be able to answer. Hi, I'm Jeff Baker. If skies were always clear, pilots wouldn't need instrument ratings below the flight levels. But IFR conditions are a fact of flying. It affects everyone, from the GA pilot to the senior airline captain. As a newly rated instrument pilot, you now have the authority to fly into conditions that would have kept you on the ground before. The first few times you find yourself in the clouds with convective activity in the forecast, a cockpit can feel like the loneliest place in the world. But IFR flight is a team effort, even if you're by yourself in the airplane. It involves everyone from the pre-flight briefers you speak to on the ground to the key players you work with while en route, air traffic controllers, or ATC.
Cherokee 88 Alpha, suggest a deviation of 30 degrees right.
This is the Washington Air Route Traffic Control Center, or ARTCC, in Leesburg, Virginia. It's an early summer afternoon, and that means air mass thunderstorms are going to be firing up. Air mass thunderstorms aren't associated with any front, and that's what makes them so unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Every part of the country has its own weather idiosyncrasies. In this area, it's the orographic lifting over the Appalachians that keeps things interesting. It can fire up a thunderstorm just about any afternoon in the summer, and snow showers in winter. When you're flying IFR through conditions like this, or any hazardous weather, ATC can help you stay out of the nasty stuff, spotting returns, providing vectors around weather, passing along pilot reports. But the fact is, there's no magic wand here on the ground to get you through bad weather, or even see where it is all the time. That's why you need to know about weather and about the capabilities and limitations of the ATC system to be a safe, effective IFR pilot. This presentation covers key elements in the planning and execution, the strategic and tactical phases of IFR flight that all PICs should practice. Like the pilots we'll meet here shortly, they're planning a trip from here at Dulles International Airport to Bradford, Pennsylvania in a beach debonair. In a short while, we'll follow their flight and see how they deal with the challenges of IFR flight through skies percolating with convective activity. Of course, flight planning starts well before you get to the airport. It starts a few days before with a look at long-range forecasts and ends with a briefing just before scheduled departure. This is the strategic part of flight planning, getting all the relevant information about the weather conditions, the raw material that goes into making the go, no-go decision. That's really the essence of the strategic part of flight planning. First, deciding if it's safe enough to fly, and if so, determining the flight profile you plan to fly, route, altitude, and time of flight. Whether you're a new instrument pilot or an ATP, good strategic flight planning requires answering the same 4 basic questions. What's the big picture like, the system driving the weather? Are there any hazardous conditions I need to know about right off the bat? What is happening right now along my route? And what, as best as we can figure, will the weather be doing when we propose making our flight? The strategic process starts with the big picture. This is derived from a daily look at the Weather Channel. Here you can track the progress of weather systems well in advance of your flight. You'll have a general idea of what the weather will be doing on any given day. Then, as takeoff time approaches, you can use other sources to provide detailed information. Many pilots supplement their big picture with information from online sources, such as DUAT's or AOPA's website. Here you can get surface analyses, forecast graphics, radar and satellite imagery, and of course, text. Text provides detailed information while graphics fill in the gaps to form a complete picture. Armed with this information, a call to flight service adds another layer of information. You'll get a briefing for your route and the latest PIREPs and NOTAMs. Some pilots like to file their flight plan at this time. Others prefer online filing.
Good morning. This is Debonair 1588 Sierra. I'll be flying IFR from Dulles to Bradford, Pennsylvania with departure in about 3 hours, and I'd like to get a standard briefing for the route.
That's a lot of information to keep track of, so it's best to have some sort of system to record it. Air Safety Foundation flight plan forms divide the weather briefing into sections that cover each weather question. It's an ideal template for gathering the information you need to make strategic decisions. Here's the bad stuff we want to know about right away. Adverse conditions, the big picture, the synopsis, and current and forecast weather. And the better you are filling up all this nice white space with information, the better you'll be able to create a 4-dimensional picture of the weather, not only in space, but in time, how it's changing, and how fast. When you get a briefing, the briefer types in your departure point and destination, and the computer automatically brings up the weather for departure, destination, and route, along with current and forecast conditions. This is called a CAVORIS system. Briefers can see showers and convective activity on it. The weather images are almost live. There's about an 8-minute delay. It's not as good as live radar, but that's coming down the line. Briefers summarize all the surface observations from reporting stations within 25 miles of the route. The route parameters are preset in the computer. The parameters can be changed, too, expanded out to 50 miles on either side of the route, for example. Briefers also have area forecasts and weather radar imagery at their disposal. But how do you know if the forecasts are accurate? Pilots need a way to validate the predictions. That's why determining current conditions is one of the 4 keys to a good briefing. Not only conditions along the route, but more important, where's the bad stuff now?
Yes, well, if that weather's moving in from the west, where's the leading edge at this time?
Current conditions provide a base for comparison, either with later briefings or weather encountered en route. Are conditions deteriorating as predicted? Are areas of ground fog persisting longer than expected? Today, our pilots want to know how things are progressing in Cleveland, Toledo, Columbus, and Dayton. That's where the weather has to pass before it reaches Bradford. Compare the METARs and TAFs, the hourly sequence of forecasts for the airports. Did the weather appear on time as forecast, or did it arrive early or late? Getting this information will give you a better picture of the weather and how it's likely to affect your route. You may be flying into areas where weather has already arrived, or taking off into a low overcast on a drizzly day. You still want to look beyond your route. Where's the front of the high pressure system behind it? Or how far on one side or the other of your route? If it's more than 2 hours before departure time, briefers aren't required to give current en route weather, but ask for it when IFR or marginal conditions are forecast to prevail. Next, you'll want a final look at the weather just before takeoff. Many FBOs provide terminals such as this one, where you can get the same information you got at home. Although this is a supplemental briefing, make sure you take a good look. For most pilots, it's the last time they'll have graphical information before they land. Something to keep in mind anytime you're getting radar images off the web. Get the national composite image first, before you look at individual radar sites. That way you'll be suspicious if an individual site doesn't show weather you saw on the national composite. But raw information isn't going to help unless you know what it means. You've got to be able to interpret as well as acquire the information. You've got to develop a three-dimensional view of the weather because so much of it is influenced by what's happening in the upper atmosphere.
Strong southeast gales here strike the south coast late tonight and tomorrow, and then the winds veer more easterly and diminish as they head up the coastline, becoming northeast 25 there for the north coast. Northern Lynn Canal, north winds 40 knots, 8-foot seas, gale force winds for the remainder of the inside waters. And for Monday, winds come down considerably here. Southerlies at 20 knots along the south coast and still southeast at about 25 here for the north and central north coast there. Winds down to small craft advisory levels for Lynn Canal, and southeasterlies at 25 with 5-foot seas for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait. There, and heading back to the west there, Northern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, north 15 knots, northeasterlies at 20 for the North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, gale warnings for Kamishak Bay, Augustine Island, and then 25-knot winds for Shelikof Strait. And then for Monday, not too bad for Cook Inlet, north to northeast 10 to 20. About the same for Prince William Sound, easterlies at 20 for the North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories here from southern Cook Inlet down across Shelikof Strait, and then winds coming down to 20 knots there, east side of Kodiak Island. Small craft advisories here for the Bristol Bay area and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Easterlies at 25 there southwest of Kodiak Island. Lighter southeast winds for the Pacific side of the peninsula. And that holds through Monday with that same pattern, but increasing. Easterlies 30 knots for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, becoming northeast up around Bristol Bay at 30 knots, and small craft advisories from Sitkinak to Sand Point. And for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, east winds 20 knots, 8 to 13-foot seas there. And northeast here for the central Aleutians, and 30 to 35-knot northerlies and colder temperatures out over the western areas. And then those increase further, strong northwest gales for the western Aleutians. And then it looks like the gales cut off here just before you get to Adak and become kind of squirrely here, 20 to 30 knots, and generally northwest winds at 15 for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, easterly winds 20 to 30 knots or 25 to 30 knots, strongest south of Nunivak Island. Brisk easterlies there for the Pribilofs, and northeast 30 knots, St. Lawrence Island down into the northern Bering Sea with heavy freezing spray. And the heavy freezing spray continues through Monday as well, with gale force northeasterlies here for the northern Bering Sea and small craft advisories for the southwest coast, and no change for the Pribilof Islands, northeast at 30. Easterlies 15 to 20 knots for the eastern Arctic coast, central coast at about 15, and a little bit stronger, not too bad here. Easterlies at 20 knots, turning more northeast here, coming down toward Point Hope, and then 15 knots from Wells to Cape Thompson. For the Monday outlook, northeasterlies at about 20 knots from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, turning easterly here for the remainder of the Arctic coast at about 15 knots, except 20 knots on the west side. Taking a look at tonight's forecast again, pretty fair here across the interior with variably cloudy skies, some clearing. Again, a dense fog advisory out for Anchorage up the Glen Highway into the Matanuska Valley. Visibilities to a quarter mile or less throughout the night tonight until about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And this system coming northward, spreading wind and rain in later tonight along the southern panhandle. And trough keeps a chance of moisture in over Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and from the eastern Aleutians northward to the Pribilof Islands. Still a risk of some snow for St. Lawrence Island, but nothing significant at all. And snow showers out to the west. For tomorrow, a weak front keeps it damp here along the Alaska Peninsula. Southeast or east-southeast flow keeps some moisture into Kodiak Island, possibly the southern Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise, pretty good. Temperatures below zero over the interior all the way up to the Arctic coast. Warmer though south of the mountains, and wind and rain in across the southeast coast. And then that whole mess kind of lifts northward on Monday as a trough brings some showers of rain or snow to much of the panhandle. Still a chance for rain Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If you are a rural Alaskan resident with an interest in preserving subsistence hunting, trapping, and fishing for future generations, and maintaining an open forum for public expressions, opinions, and concerns regarding subsistence, consider applying for one of the Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Councils by Friday, January 29, 2016. More info at 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov.